Okay, I want to thank all of you for your patience. We had a couple technical issues, but we're ready to go now. So I'll call the meeting of the Morrow County Commission to order, and we'll start with the pledge.
Pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Okay, our first item will be our public comment. And what I'm gonna do, like I have in the past, is first we'll ask anybody in the room if they have public comment. And then anyone on Zoom, if you have public comment, just raise your hand. And then if there's somebody, then I'll explain what the rules are, otherwise it won't. So is there anybody in the room that has a public comment? Okay, so I'll just quick go over the rules. If you have public comment, this is the time for the public to give comments to the commissioners. It's not a debating time, it's not a give and take, it's not, so it's just time for the public to speak to us. Each person has 3 minutes, and we ask that you keep it civil and do not have no personal attacks. So, and just state your name and if you're with an organization or something before you start. So,
Mike Hughes, Fire Chief, Boardman Fire and Rescue District. Good morning, Commissioners. I see on your agenda today, you have a line item under new business, line 6C, discussion of requests from Oregon City Manager. By bringing that, I come before you if the discussion relates to the CDA property and fire protection services. I'd like to be able to answer any questions you may have, although typically you don't do a back and forth. If you do engage with the city manager, I'd like an opportunity to rebut or make comments based on any comments from them. I also wanted to offer that although we have 2 representatives of the CDA from the county, Commissioner Sykes and Commissioner Runholtz, that I was engaged in the contract negotiations that are currently in place for fire protection. And I would love to be able to give you, all 3 of you, the background of how we got where we are today. And that's why I'm here for you.
I'd love to hear it.
Yep, so that I don't have, that will go way beyond the 3 minutes, but again, that's why I came to answer any questions and give you that background. So.
okay, thank you. Okay, anybody else in the room have a comment? Is there anyone online on Zoom that has a comment? Please raise your hand. Okay. Don't see anyone. Next item is our consideration adoption of agenda. We had this last meeting, but it's still kind of new, so I'm going to ask our administrator Matt to go over again what this means.
So this is a new action that was adopted at the end of December as part of the rules and process for the Board of Commissioners. What this allows all commissioners to place an item on the agenda, and so gives free access to that. Agenda items can be introduced by any of the 3 commissioners and the county administrator. In doing so, that means that if at the beginning of each meeting, the agenda needs to be adopted, and that allows by majority vote, and that makes sure that everything is good for discussion. If it's not adopted, then certain things can be taken off, and then another motion on the amended agenda can be made.
Okay, thanks, Matt. So do I hear a motion to adopt the agenda?
I move that we adopt the agenda as presented.
Second.
Been moved and seconded. Any further discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
All opposed? Motion carried. Okay, next up is our consent agenda. That either commissioners want to pull out of that and have a discussion on, or are you
I'm good with it as it is.
accepting all of them?
I'm good with it, so I'll make the motion to approve the consent agenda as presented.
I second that.
Moved and seconded. Any further discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
All opposed? Motion carried. So our next item up is a public hearing, Morrow County Public Transit Supplemental Budget for fiscal year 2025, and our Finance Director, Kevin. Let's see that.
Good morning, Commissioners. Kevin is Local County Finance Director. So this is a supplemental budget that was prepared at the request of,
I got a quick question for you. Should we do like we normally do with the public hearing? Should we open the public hearing and then take a staff report?
Yes,
You
you're
think
right.
We should do that?
Yep.
Or Is that okay? to
at
do?
that, yeah, whatever the
Yeah,
standard
that's.
procedure is for.
Then we'll take public comment. Okay. Okay, so I'll open the public hearing on the supplemental budget for the transit for fiscal year 2025. And we'll start with our staff report from Kevin.
Okay, so this was a supplemental budget I was requested to prepare for public transit by Patrick. And it is for purchase of some equipment and technology to facilitate operations. I believe Patrick and Steve are from Transit are here if you have questions about specifically what that system or the technology is. Because they're the experts on that, but essentially this is a transfer of appropriations from operating contingency under local budget law. Normally that wouldn't be something that we need to do a full supplemental budget and public hearing for. However, we do have to create a new appropriations category of capital outlay in that particular fund. And anytime we create a new appropriations category where there wasn't something budgeted and appropriated previous to, then we need to follow the procedures for a full supplemental budget in a public hearing. So the details of the transfer of appropriations from contingency into materials and services and capital outlay are in the resolution that I drafted and included in the board packet.
Okay, was there any further, did you have any statements? Okay, does the commissioners have any questions of staff about the?
I mean, so just to be clear, this is basically the purpose of the operating contingency is to pull from at later date and just happens to be, we're using a category that didn't exist before, just.
Yep.
Yeah, okay.
Operating contingency is just things that were not foreseen at the time of
Yeah.
preparation of budget.
Yeah. No, I think that's the point
So
of
it's-
having those.
So is this the app that you've talked about?
It is. It's from our 5310 funds to allocate the purchase of the equipment to get that app up. and running.
That's what I thought.
Yeah.
Let me be sure.
Okay. Oh, one quick thing I forgot to do was use on a public hearing, we asked that any of the commissioners that have a potential or an outright conflict of interest, we declare that now, so. Okay, then we'll open this, we got all the questions of staff, okay.
Yeah.
So then we'll open up the public testimony. Is there anyone in the room that wants to speak either in favor or neutral or opposed to this passage of the supplemental budget? Is there anyone on Zoom that wants to testify about the supplemental budget, either opposed, neutral, or in favor? Raise your hand. Okay, not seeing none, then we'll close the public hearing and the commission will make their decision.
I'll move to adopt the supplemental budget as presented in resolution R-2024. And
Sorry, we updated the resolution number. It's R-2025-01.
so resolution R-2025-01. And make supplemental appropriations as reflected therein.
Do I hear a second?
I second.
Moved and seconded, any further discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
All opposed? Motion carried. Thank
Thank
you.
you.
Okay, that moves us on for our business items. 6A, selection of construction manager, general contractor for courthouse project.
With the county courthouse, the circuit courthouse that we're looking to build, last spring, and I'd invite Earl Eastman to come up, the speaker. He's our He's with Alliance. He's with our construction management owners representative contractor. As we go through and look to take care of this project, we have a contracted architect to take care of full design and to help confine costs and kind of have value engineering be addressed during this design period. We proposed a CMGC process, which is a construction manager, general contractor, be brought in during the design process. Just want to turn it over to Earl just to give just a little explanation about the process that we went through on deciding that. I do want to acknowledge that our scoring committee that we had reviewing RFPs consisted of 3 county staff members and then 2 of our design groups, myself, Vincent Guerrero, Eric Imes from the staff, and then we have Kelly Stewart, who's one of the design team from DLR Group, and Earl himself. And so that was the scoring committee. We had 9 proposals come in, and so we attracted some good attention on it. This was originally it was posted for the Boardman location, but we haven't had any issue with those continuing under the Hepner adjustment. So we're looking to do that. With that, I'll just turn it to Earl Eastman, and he'll kind of review the process and introduce what the proposed CMGC that we're looking to put an intent to award today.
Thank you. So the RFP was released December 9th. It was posted on the county's website, and then as well as advertised in had to be advertised in a regional newspaper, as well as the DJC, the Oregon DJC. And so we had a pre-proposal conference on the 19th that was not mandatory. We actually met at the Boardman site because our RFP at that time said that that would be the location. After the commissioner meetings after that, as Matt said, we called all of the proposers and made sure they were comfortable with what they presented with the Hepner site. So we received the 9 proposals, and the scoring team got together, and the RFP itself identified 8 categories that we would score the RFPs against. And so each of the scorers reviewed their proposals. We got together and scored. And so the top 3 proposers were in this order were Boughton Construction out of Richland, Kirby Nagelhout out of Pendleton, and Shervinell Construction out of Kennewick. And so the design team and your construction management team had experience with all 3 of these contractors, some of them significant experience with working with them, but we still called references and made sure that there weren't any red flags. We were able to call references that were listed, as well as references from just projects they had listed in their RFP. So very tight scoring between number 1 and number 2, but the team was unanimous in their recommendation of Boughton Construction.
Could you also just explain how their fee is comprised of?
Yeah, so as part of the request for proposal, we asked them to identify the relevant company experience, their team, the team's experience together on similar projects, and then also provide the fee that they would be, have for the cost of the project. And so the fee gets applied to the total cost of construction. So over the next year, as the design is completed, they'll give us estimates. They'll bid the project out, and then a fee will be applied to the cost of the project. So Boughton's fee was hold on one second here, 3.57%. Kirby Nagelhout's fee was 3.37, so 0.2%. The lowest fee we received was 2.75. The highest fee we received was 5. So all of the fees are very consistent with what we see in the industry for projects this size. So what we did with the fees is the cheapest fee got the most points and we divvied them up that way. So, yeah, any questions on that front?
Any questions of, any questions of Matt too? He was part of the scoring team, so.
Could we see some of the scoring stuff?
Yes, we could, submit that over to you.
Yeah, typically, the entire process, the scores, the individual scores from the scorers are all public documents. In the past, we've waited to make those public until we're under contract,
Okay.
with the general contractor, and then we, cause all of the firms who weren't selected wanna see what the scoring was. You know, they will ask for that, as well as they wanna see their competitors' proposals a lot of times, and so those being public documents, once we're under contract, that's typically when we would release those.
Okay.
Just, I will say the scoring was very tight. Between Boughton and Shervinell, who's in third place, it literally was 1 point difference. We had Boughton and in first place, and then Kirby Nagelhout and Chevronel tied in the second position. There was then a fairly substantial gap between the next. We then kind of went with just the references and some of their job experience that was going on there. The fee rates were fairly similar. Like I said, they're one of them was 0.2 lower, but we felt that was negligible when compared to it. Just looking at them. One nice thing is, I mean, we had some great firms from as far as Boise to up out in Portland being engaged. But our 3 finalists were all, you know, local. 2 of the 3 were, and have a good experience and were well recommended on it. So we feel comfortable with the Boughton recommendation. The step that we would be asking for is to authorize us to do an intent to award. We go into, we post notification to the remaining finalists. They would have a period to protest if necessary, and we would go in and negotiate a contract and bring them back to finalized contract to the BOC at hopefully the next meeting for approval. And so you'd have a full breakdown of all the agreements on that as we go through.
So just a motion is to approve intent to award the DC contract, the recommended contract, and direct staff agreement into contract negotiations. Do I hear that motion?
I move to approve the intent to award the CMCG GC contract to Boughton Construction and direct staff to enter into contract negotiations.
A second.
Moved and seconded. Any further discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
All opposed, motion carried.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you, Ron.
Okay, next up is to set a work session to begin development of a long-range capital improvement plan. That's me. We talked about it quite a bit. I've been getting quite a few interactions with the public all over the county about different capital projects that they may feel that, or what are we gonna do, or what's going on? And I've thought for some time that we need a long-range plan. One thing I would like to kind of adjust on this, I got to thinking is, first of all, I guess I'll ask you guys, is there consensus that if we need a CIP plan?
For my part, yes,
Okay.
very, very strongly, yeah.
Yeah,
Okay,
in favor of it. You know, I think it goes back to one of the things I've always said, you know, I think good governance, and this is something that I don't know if the county's had and ever, if so, I think it's been a long time since. If there had been something, it's time to update it.
Okay. I had originally said, well, we'll have a works, but what I want to ask you is what you guys' thoughts are. I guess there might be two options on this. We could have a work session, or maybe I could just get together with Matt or one of you guys. If we wanted to say, appoint one of you guys to the, it's like a subcommittee and work with Matt and bring something back just as a business item. And I put that in there. I was reading up on other, CIP plans, and I ran across this, kind of little 4-page outlay of how this one entity, municipality did their plan. Of course, they're probably bigger, and you don't have to just give it, get the thought juices running, I guess. So I don't know, what's your thoughts? Do we need a full-fledged work session, or?
I think a full-fledged work session, and then we can all get on the same page of how we would like this to be built out, and then maybe out of that, we make a subcommittee of some kind. But I think a work session is entirely appropriate for what's being proposed.
Okay.
That's my thoughts.
So I'd ask Matt, so in your other experiences in government, have you been involved in a construction,
Yes.
capital improvement plan?
Several different items, dealt with a $600 million, capital improvement, plan for Summit County. In that case, they had a consultant come in, help do all the estimates, get that pulled together. That included, when we talk about a capital investment plan, that's talking about buildings down to, major vehicles. Whether we want to expand this into a capital project or capital improvement, plan for the roads as well, since that's a separate fund, or keep that separate. Those are all kind of things that should be discussed in that workshop. Also, I think, a work session would be good to bring in, several of the specific staff members that are impacted by that, have their discussion on what priorities are, allow the BOC to understand from staff who are out there interfacing with the county's items, what there is, so nothing's overlooked. I mean, we've got the very obvious ones. We've got, of course, circuit court that we're already under, county courthouse that needs to be touched up, public works, public health here and there in Boardman. Those are the easy ones, but there's other projects that even I'm not fully up to speed on that would be helpful to have, facilities, public works, fair, and everybody come in that work session just to discuss, get an outlay of if we want to keep it internal or if we want to discuss having a contractor come in. One of the things that was approved in the budget that we're looking to take care of in these two last quarters is we've got $90,000 for some feasibility studies on that, on public works, public health, and the sheriff's office. Just a very, having a contractor come in, set some parameters of wants and needs and be able to do that. If we wanted to continue with that or redirect the 90,000 to a contractor to come in and do a holistic approach, we have several options. So I think a work session with the entire VOC and many of the chief staff members would be very helpful to help kind of get us all on the same list. I've also seen capital improvement plans, which are just a 2-page Excel spreadsheet, just saying, here's where we got, and here's where we're shooting for and what we can do. I would love to do a bit more robust one where we do take in the one-time monies that we're having coming in from SIPs and CREZ amounts and actually constrain it so that we're saying we're putting so much into reserves for these projects and we're anticipating, and then we make up any difference on that through general funds or other funding options. And so I think a work session would be very helpful.
Are we talking? Okay, go ahead.
Well, I appreciate that. One of the things, I guess, the first thing that come to my mind, I'm thinking capital improvement plan. I am thinking mainly buildings here. We do have the road committee who identifies the bridges and the roads and stuff. And in a sense, maybe they could be part of this, but as far as like vehicles and equipment purchases, personally, I view that as each department brings forward and we just do that in the normal budgeting process,
Okay.
That isn't the long-range capital improvement plan. I'm thinking of capital improvement plans as being things that are millions of dollars, not tens or hundreds.
Well, one thing we can, I mean, then we kind of address this in the direction of a capital facilities plan, where we're talking these big ticket items that are, more or less building, directed. And I still think that could warrant a good discussion on, because in that case, you know, I'll take the sheriff's, office, as a case in point. Fine building, outdated, leaky, you know, and it's not really a good building. There's not a single room they can pull their deputies in to have trainings. Brian's office is about the biggest one.
You just spent all that money on the roof and it's still.
And so, I mean, having the sheriff come in, having Public Works come in, and almost have, you know, have the BOC say, hey, these are all great projects. Let's get some information on there, and then have another meeting where you prioritize where you think those orders should be. And then, Kevin, myself, and if we have a consultant doing that, then we priorities, constrain the budget. And we've got an idea and say, Sheriff, we're looking 2030 for your new sheriff's, office, if that's how things roll out, and give some expectations and adjust that as the budget years come and go.
I agree with that. You know, I guess I'll contradict myself a little bit here, you know. I do believe that the road and stuff, but you know, I've said it many times before. I hope that we prioritize the discretionary money that we're having come in through SIPs and enterprise zones be spent on the things that we can only spend discretionary dollars on. So I think that'd be helpful when we start talking about this to identify the best that we can, because I know that there is no guarantees of how much the county will receive from enterprise zone or SIP money. SIP money is probably a little more certain. But the enterprise zone is up to the whim of the enterprise zone board. But, you know, based off of historical performance, you know, what we could be expecting out in those funds and be applying those to the thing that we can only spend discretionary dollars on. You know, all the other buildings and stuff can be general fund dollars. And as some of these things come out of enterprise zone, you know, again, this would be some forecasting. And I know from our last presentation from Mike Gorman, when he talked about some of the stuff, you know, has changed, you know, unexpectedly, but the best that we can, let's identify what we think those revenues going forward. So we have something to roughly budget. Because again, once it comes out of enterprise zone, those will be dollars that we can't spend on roads. So those would be dollars to put towards facilities. And that's personally how I'd like to see us, you know, kind of budget out the dollars and, you know, having all that information as we start going down this road of a capital improvement plan. That I think that'd be helpful for us to identify those dollars, where they come from, and to our best guess, what will be available.
I talked to Mike about this. He thinks this is a really good idea. I don't know if he's online, but he said he'd be happy to. No, he said happy.
He'd be willing
I'm
to.
gonna watch it. He said, yeah, he did say, that's a good idea, I'm for it, and he said he would put together a revenue projection for us. The one question I have, and I guess, is, are we gonna try and wrap this all up in one work session?
I
If
wouldn't think
so-
it would be.
Well, and the reason I'm saying this is because I've had people, I don't know, who do we want to be able to give input? Just staff? Because I've had people from other government entities that, you know, where we have facilities. I said, you know, what are you guys gonna do about this? Or we'd like to see the county do that. And do we get, you know, more of the public involved? Maybe talk to the mayors or city councils or administrators, ask them to, hey, you know, what would you guys like to see
I
in
think,
your?
I
what
think
do you
we
think
should
of
set the first work session with us and with county staff and use it as an opportunity to identify our priorities and then use that as a platform to then go out to city councils and say, hey, this is what we're looking at. We would love your feedback. So yes, I think this should be a multiple meetings and start enter and then expand as we
Okay.
go. That would be my
That's-
suggestion.
I agree with that, because I like to see it. Like I said, I've had a couple of people who are not staff approach me about different things that they would like to see the county do. And doesn't mean it's gonna happen, but at least get on the list, you know?
So when do we want to do it?
what's our schedule look like here? Next meeting after the afternoon? We don't know how big our agenda is for the next meeting.
Not, I mean, so the next meeting would be February 5th. And after that, the 19th. Either of those, I don't believe we have anything scheduled for the afternoon or land use hearings or anything like that. Do you know of anything, Valerie?
Not yet.
We could get ready for that. Either of those dates, if we wanted to do it sooner rather than later.
Let's do February 5th if we can do it.
You feel, from the staff perspective, you can get, whatever you feel you'll need for background information to bring to us available by the 5th.
As I think we can get the preliminary kind of wish list or want list, that would be easy to do.
That may
You know.
already be.
Yeah, I mean, most of them do. Public Works is already talking to me. Weeds already has their grand plans. Public Health has their kind of needs, but it's not as structured as well as some of the others. But we can definitely come and kind of identify the different projects. And if the commission does interact with other people saying, hey, could we do a joint project with so-and-so and make it a little bit more efficient? Those could be identified and allowed us to go research those a little bit more for a future meeting after that.
And Mike's got his hand raised.
Mike. Hi.
I
Then-
can't. Oh, okay, there I'm unmuted. I don't, the February 5th date doesn't work for me. I'm gonna be out of the office from the 29th to the 5th, and with budget being due, that may hamper other departments' ability to prepare and participate on the 5th. So if we could push it out to the 19th, that might be better.
And hey, can I get a quick question, Mike?
Sure.
I'm saying the 5th is too soon for you to come in with your capital improvement requests or a revenue? Because I think that could be done. I mean, first would be gathering all the projects.
Yeah, I just,
Prioritizing and having a revenue stream forecast could come later. So are you talking about you won't be able to have your capital requests ready at that time?
well, I probably don't have a big capital request, so, for my department, but I just don't know that, well, for one, I'm not gonna be there that day, and I would love to be able to participate.
Right.
And two, I just, putting together, future revenue projections, along with trying to get my budget done, because I believe budgets are due the 15th. It's just, and then I'm gone for a few days. It just puts a big time restraint on what I can get done. So if we could shove it out till the 19th, and that, may have other departments, similar situation, just, maybe a little too soon on the 5th.
Okay.
We also, it was pointed out to me that our ERP consultants are on site over February 5th. So the February 19th would probably be better.
Okay, then let's do February 19th.
Item up is our C, discussion of request from Oregon City Manager, and that's August.
Yeah, so I'm not proposing we take any actions. I just thought, hey, this looks like a great spot to start some discussion on this stuff. And a lot of this, will be just sort of updating me on where we're at, because the CDA is, I think it would be fair to say, a little bit of a mess right now. I think it's fair to say. Yeah, all right, cool. So the first request that was sent in a letter was areas of influence. What is the potential situation? What is the situation for potentially adding the proposed areas to the Oregon area of influence? Did that come up in the last CREZ meeting at all?
Well, my thought on this is, I'm not sure. This seems kind of like a backdoor way to do business, is if he wants to expand the area of influence and boundaries of the CREZ, why doesn't he come to the CREZ meeting? Because it's a joint, rather than come to one of the principals and say, I want this, is just come, because that's what the CREZ's purpose is to have the CREZ board there. And then he could make his case to
Case
the
there.
board, and then the board could decide, yeah, we want to expand the area of influence. With us, it's kind of like you're coming to one of the principals. We don't have the other CREZ members here, you see, so that's my thought on both those requests is just come to the CREZ meeting and make your case, you know, and see what because they're the organization that'll decide that, you know, CREZ 3. You know.
Okay.
So that's my thought on those.
So Matt, we approved something that entailed the city of Oregon in the enterprise zone. There was some agreement that was updating. And last I heard, it was waiting for the port to sign off on. Did that include adding the area of influence? I don't remember.
I have been looking for that map and haven't been able to pull that up. I don't believe it does include the CDA property at this time. And so, particularly the south one. And so that would be something that, would be a revision to it for them.
Yeah, otherwise I agree with Dave that, you know, it's not us to unilaterally decide, you know. I believe that that's an action best taken up by the CREZ 3 board, because they're the ones that would have to approve any expansion of the property or dictate the area.
All right. Move on to the next.
And just as a clarification, at least as I understand it, I think that the CREZ board would make a recommendation to the BOC and to the Port of Morrow to officially adopt that, because then there would have to be a document come back through and we have to sign off on it. But I believe that the CREZ board would be the one to make a recommendation.
So that's their job, and it would perhaps be in correct order for us to tell the thing that is supposed to tell us what they think should be done, to tell them what they think that we should think.
Yeah, I think I followed. but
Yeah, you
yes.
think, yeah, that was a little complicated. Yeah, okay, all right. Thank you. So the next item was annexation of CDA properties into the Oregon Rural Fire Protection District. Fire Chief Hughes, since you're here, maybe you'd be the best person to answer this question. What is the situation regarding the current fire protection for the properties, and what does that contract look like? Awesome. Thank
They
you.
have access to all this
Okay.
stuff, so. If I can, I'd like to speak directly to it. If you're allow me.
Yeah. Oh, and just for clarification on, you know, who wasn't on the agenda, but in the past, when we have a principal like Michael Hughes involved with one of our issues, we've generally always, have them speak. And so that's just to clarify, so that it's not really a general public and everybody gets to speak, a big discussion period. But when it's a principal like himself, then we've done that.
So just a little background, sir. Originally, when the CDA approached Oregon Fire and asked them if they were interested in providing fire protection to the entire CDA property, they turned that request down. Therefore, as you can see by the letter that I just provided you, the CDA came to us and asked us if we were interested in providing fire and emergency protection to all of the CDA property in Morrow County. Once we agreed to that, we met with the CDA executive officer, the fire chief from Umatilla County Fire Department, myself, the sheriff's department, both in Morrow and Umatilla counties. And we set a plan in place of how we were going to provide fire protection to that area, given that it's on county boundaries. So the fire chief from Umatilla and myself agreed that we would, although we have our own counties to protect, that we would unilaterally protect those together. The reason for that is that we're both full-time staffed organizations, and we can provide like for like apparatus. So if I need a truck company for some reason, he can send that, and vice versa. It's very unusual to have those kind of agreements with volunteer organizations because they don't know if they can respond at all. So, we agreed to provide the service and, we set a, contract and, we had it signed and ready to go. At that point, Oregon Fire came back to the CDA and said they were then interested in participating. And it was suggested that they receive the current, piece of property they have, the 640 acres. I agreed to that because it made sense, because I was going to have to go through Oregon's fire district to get to that piece of property to provide protection, because of, the security issues within Oregon Military Department. So, each of us agreed and signed contracts, agreeing to provide fire protection and emergency services to our assigned areas. Again, we have a mutual aid agreement with OMD. So, that's another asset. And of course, if it was decided to give Oregon our piece that we're currently contracted under, they would have to come through our fire district to get to that piece of property. Lastly, and probably most importantly, is that the contract, as you will see, which I provided, clearly states that we will continue to provide fire protection and emergency services until such time we can annex the property. The reason for the delay in our annexation, because as hopefully this commission remembers, almost 2 years ago, I came before the board requesting an annexation. We need a legal description. None of us, Oregon Fire or myself, have a legal description, and the CDA is currently working on getting a legal description so that we can provide that to the county, so we can come and do exactly what happened this morning, have a public hearing and officially and formally request annexation into our district. The other thing that I think that you probably should consider is that the taxing rates for each entity are very different, and our ISO ratings are very different. So there's some cost benefits to the property owners, which is the CDA, for us to continue doing that. And historically, this board has never gone against the request of a property owner to annex land. In other words, the CDA is specifically asked as the owners for us to annex that land. So that is how we came to be.
As a question,
Sure.
was this a vote by the CDA or was this a decision by the executive director for that?
If you read the letter, that will clearly state that it was a unanimous vote by the entire CDA for each fire district to provide emergency services. That I can provide that material for you if you like, and it's on their website as well, on the CDA's website.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
I appreciate that.
Any other questions, sir?
Okay. Well, I gotta flip my page over.
So I'll tell you where my perspective is, and I think Chief Hughes kind of touched on it. I believe that first, I don't know, but I don't believe that we can unilaterally say that you are going to be annexed into this district. Based on past experience, typically the landowner comes in and requests to be annexed into a fire district. And so to me, it's up to whatever the landowner to bring the request to be annexed into the fire district, and they will tell us which fire district they wish to be annexed into. And but for the lawsuit that Umatilla County has filed, the property would currently be owned by the Morrow.
Yeah.
So I think that until that lawsuit gets finalized, that we continue with the status quo and let, honestly, I don't know that the Umatilla County lawsuit has a leg to stand on, but we'll let the courts figure that out.
Yeah.
But I believe that eventually the property will end up in the hands of the Port of Morrow, and I think it's best to let them tell us who they want to have provide that fire service.
And then Justin, can you hear me? Saw him, he was there. Was there.
You're unmuted, Justin.
Perfect. Thank you. Yes, I can hear you.
Could you, just maybe, not right now, but at some point, give us, your perspective on what the legal process is, for incorporating / annexing, property into a fire district? Because we have been given conflicting views, and I would like to have your opinion at some point on what that is.
Yes, absolutely. I can add that, look into that and add that as a business item to come back and discuss, looking over the proposal from Aragon and then also what's been submitted from Chief Hughes and discuss that with the board at an upcoming Board of Commission meeting, if that's okay.
That would be great, and I would appreciate that.
It looks like Mike might have some input.
Mike Gorman. Oh, Mike, yeah, go ahead.
Okay, can you hear me? All right. So, Commissioner Peterson, what exactly is your question? I mean, annexations kind of run through my department. And there's basically two ways a district can annex property. The first and easiest way is the landowner or landowners request. And we've had a couple of those, 2 or 3 in the last 2 or 3 years. One with the Boardman Fire District for some land just west of the depot property back in, I think, 2019. And I believe it was last year, some a couple, 3 landowners up Willow Creek towards Cutsforth Park requested to be annexed into the Heppner Rural Fire District. That is kind of the easiest way to do it. It takes an action by the county commission to approve that. Then the district has to file annexation notice with me and with the Department of Revenue. The other way is to hold an election. The district requests annex properties, and if then there's an election on whether those landowners vote yes or no. And that's kind of more of a complicated way of doing it, but those are basically the 2 ways that a special district can annex property.
Okay, awesome. Thank you, Mike. I really appreciate that.
So just clarification, Mike, I'm sure I heard this right, but the election would be, those affected property owners would be the ones voting on it, correct?
Yes.
So, yeah.
It's similar to like creating a new district. I remember a few years back when OSU Extension was wanting to create a district, and they held a vote and it did not pass, but the process is similar for annexing than it as well as creating a new district.
Okay, awesome. Thank you. Okay, next one was on roadway development. So the CDA had a plan on road development. Are they sort of stuck with the?
So the only roadway that the CDA's, there was $7 million that Representative Smith had gotten for the CDA to build road, and that $7 million was supposed to be split 50-50 between Umatilla County and Morrow County.
Mm-hmm.
And the Umatilla County side, the priority was to get from the interchange where Westland Road meets I-82
Mm-hmm.
and improve that access and get it up to ODOT standards, whatever, and then come as far west towards the main entrance at the depot exit as $3.5 million would get them. And then on the Morrow County side, because at some point, and I forget the exact date, but it's coming quickly,
Mm-hmm.
the Oregon Military Department will not allow anybody, the CDA or anybody to continue to go through their gate and then go and access the property to the west of them, which would be the southwest corner, because currently that's the only access to that. So the $3.5 million that Morrow County got is going to improve the road from the main entrance into the
Mhm.
depot. That will be outside the security gate
Mhm.
and head west as far as that money will go, so that you can access the CDA property in Morrow County. And that's what's been proposed. And I would have to verify this with somebody, but I think that the proposed, talking about the road plan,
Mhm.
I believe would be across what's called parcel 2, which has not been transferred from the Army,
Mhm.
federal Army, not Oregon Army, but federal Army, hasn't been transferred to the CDA yet. That's the 28 or 26 acres, that's
Mhm.
parcel 2 that we're waiting to get transferred. And again, if we get the lawsuit settled and all property in Morrow County becomes the property of Port of Morrow, that would be the Port of Morrow's property.
Mhm.
And so then it would be up to them to build that road.
Okay.
But the current proposal, as I understand it, would be utilizing that parcel 2. Well, that's still the property of the federal government, and no, I don't know who anybody's envisioning is going to pay to build that road. From past discussions that I have heard from the Port of Morrow, their next priority of building roads would be to extend east from Patterson Ferry and run along the north side of the railroad property and make a connector into the southwest corner property there, which would make the most sense, because that way you have to take the state money, come in from the east, the port build a road from the west, and you have 2 ways in and out. Good. As far as building the road, that will eventually be the port's property, and that would be up to the port to determine where and how they want to build it. So that's my perspective.
Then I think pretty much got the questions that I wanted. However, the portion of the 640 acres, the comment on it being used potentially for water sourcing, I think that's a great idea. Tamara, if you're on there, would this be a good fit for the water consortium to address looking at that as a potential use for some of that? That seems
I
like
don't know
that
if
would be a
she's
great. Okay, well, maybe when she comes in, I'll ask her about that, because that seems like that would be a good space for that idea to go to. All right. That's all I've got on that.
So in that 640 acres, that again will come to Port of Morrow's property and but I do support the concept of, I know that Aaron would like to have another source of water. Their current source is off of West 4th Street out here down by the Columbia River. And they pump and pipe it all the way up to the end of Division. And they have a water tower there. And I know Aaron has expressed that he'd like to develop another well out there, storage facility up there, But, that would be up to the port to, I would
To
hope
whoever-
and encourage that they would do that, but
Yeah, but if the water consortium said, hey, this is a recommendation that we've got for helping to address water sourcing issues, that might be a good way to
right.
get
and
that recommendation.
That would allow the Aaron in the city of Oregon to have additional water right capacity or gallonage if we were to tie into their system to provide some of the places out.
Cool. That's it for me.
Tamara's here if you want to ask me.
Okay. Well, Tamara, since you walked in, we were just talking about the Oregon city letters that were sent, and just talking about the last one on potentially using that 640 acres for water sourcing. Would it be appropriate to have the water consortium explore that as an idea?
Sure. Thank you, Commissioner Peterson. For the record, Tamara Mabott. I think the Water Consortium could. I defer to Chair Sykes on that issue. the Uvatilla Morrow County Drinking Water Roadmap Project is also a place that would, I would predict would look at locations to provide a community drinking water system. So the purpose of that grant, initially, the scope is to look at opportunities to connect to public water systems. And where Oregon does not have really excess capacity compared to Boardman. Boardman has a lot of undeveloped water, right, if you will. I think that that very much could be a possibility. We've mentioned that a little bit to Aaron. And it's, in addition to the
Sorry,
phase one.
I don't
Oh,
understand.
Sorry, I don't either. In addition to the current project, the roadmap one, if you will, there's a $1.2 million congressional direct spending that's earmarked for Morrow County only. And that money could be used for something like drilling a well for the city. We haven't got that far along, the engineers haven't, but it is a possibility.
Awesome, thank you.
Just throw in one thing, when we're talking about the consortium. In my mind, that's what this was built for. This
Yes.
type of thing. So I can see it, it's built to bring in clean water and drinking water, so in Laguna, so I think that would be something that they would definitely want to take a look at. So, okay, anything else?
That's it for me.
Okay. All right, next we'll move on to 6E, update on the SCP application for West Glen Clean Water Engineering. That's Matt.
So, as the county, under the direction of the Board of Commissioners, has tried to put forward a project for the West Glen area, one of the items that we were keyed in to apply for was the supplemental environmental project application for through the Department of Environmental Quality. This would allow the county to tap into over $581,000 of fines that the Port of Morrow's paid for their discharge violations. The intent was to take what we're doing with, take the next step from the Business Oregon grants that we're working on and do a full engineering on West Glen to position us for grant applications. DEQ reviewed it and they informally denied it back in November, but hadn't made any determination on it. The port and county officials met January 16th to discuss what options they were at. DEQ stated that they just didn't feel that the project was ripe at this time. They stated that they are in support of the project, but were looking to see if they could put the money towards OHA's current SEP. They got the original one, and then allow Oregon Health Authority to issue those funds to the county as we get a little more mature on the project. So that was a bit frustrating, but not a totally closed door. We are proceeding with it, and as we do community outreach with on West Glen through the Business Oregon grants, OHA has expressed an interest in being involved in assisting with the community outreach to make sure we have community buy-in on that, and hopefully that sets us up for to tie into some of those funds that we originally applied for directly. So a downer, but not a complete downer, as we do have an option to it. I would have preferred a much cleaner line to the
Make a
funding.
positive spin out of that.
That's what
well
they're
done.
trying to do, and we do appreciate the partnerships that the state have. I really wish they would have just said, the county, you're trying to do something that other counties aren't, and here, we're in full support. They didn't see it that way, and so a little bit of extra bureaucratic steps to take, but we're hoping to overcome that over the next 6 months. So just wanted to give an update to the Board of Commissioners, and if there's any questions on that.
Did DEQ say when they thought the situation would be right?
Well, partly because this is one of those things where, okay, the money's available. We can't wait for the money, but so we apply. And so one of the things they said, well, you haven't had enough community outreach to do it. Tamara organized a mailing that we did, several months ago. We didn't get much of a, return, but every residence in that West Glen area received a note card and, were invited to take on a survey. We created a funny little, well, not really funny, but I mean, I was on it, so it was kind of funny. Video that people could go on the QR code and go see. And so every person in West Glen received notification on that. And we had an abysmal return on that. And so we really looking with Rev, our group that's through Business Oregon, to do some direct outreach and try to pull that in. That was really a bit of a Hail Mary attempt to say, hey, we've got some community outreach, but we do know we're a little bit up ahead. It's interesting, the requirement for community outreach. We definitely want residents to feel engaged, to feel like they're part of the process, but to make that so we don't even get the money to study the options before going it is a little bit tough, especially for some neighborhoods that have a history of not engaging in that way. So we're hoping that we can take some next steps as the Clean Water Consortium gets organized and goes through these things. We're hoping that some of these projects will transfer over to that, and that we can have some successful engagements.
Did DEQ say what their version of successful outreach was?
They were pretty, they did a nice little tap dance. They don't give us any definitions on that. I mean, of course, they would love the whole community to be pounding on our door saying, yes, please do this, do this. I don't know, and they did not set a bar for what the acceptable community engagement is.
So is there an opportunity to speak with them again? I thought I saw something at one point that there was going to be another meeting regarding moving forward.
So the future, I mean, right now DEQ is pretty much, I mean, Tamara and I have had discussions directly with the DEQ saying, give us a graduated thing, give us some money to do more of that community outreach and then do that, and then you hold on to the other funds. They were not, they did not have any buy-in on that, and they pretty much during the conversation said, you know, you just work with OHA, we're done. And so as of right now, Tamara, correct me, it doesn't seem like we have any other meetings with DEQ planned. They're just having us work with OHA. Was that your read as well?
That's correct. And DEQ has, through that enforcement process, said it's between us and OHA. And as you know, we've already asked them to, one question is, how do you measure success? What's enough public involvement? And what is the process to access some of those funds?
So now we're going through OHA rather than DEQ, is that?
It appears that they are moving forward to award the SCP monies to OHA under their current SCP arrangement, and then we would have access potentially of money through that. That has not been made official. There was another group that put forward an SCP application. However, the port would have to give a thumbs up to that, and at this point, I believe we still have support of the port to pursue what we're looking at.
Thank you for the update.
No problem.
Questions on that? Okay. Next up would be 6E, legislative update, 2025 bills impacting economic development. SIP map.
So with the state legislature, I'm looking to get a little bit more deep on the impacts to counties that we have. One of the subjects that I have been tracking is with SIP development. There's two bills that have been presented for the 25 state legislative session, HB 2377 and HB 2725, that impact SIPs potentially, and this is all in relation to HB 2009 from the 23 session, which included ports into the consideration for all SIPs. 2377 is sponsored by Representative Bobby Levy. We've had discussions with her. Rather than taking an action, she's kind of defaulted to saying, I'd like to commission a study be done on what the proper role for ports in economic developments in their areas and within their greater district areas. Appreciate the gesture. I wanted a little bit more definitive action. 2725 is sponsored by Representative Haifam. And this one is headed by several representatives and lobbyists from the city of Hillsborough, which is impacted by the Port of Portland. This would make it so that ports are only involved with SIPs for port areas, port districts that are located along the Columbia River and have 4 or more industrial parks. In my just quick analysis, that would include Port of Columbia, Port of Portland, Port of Morrow, and Port of Umatilla. I don't know how that addresses Hillsborough's consternations with the Port of Portland. Bobby Levy is getting at the request of AOC's legislative consultants, is convening a meeting on Monday, January 27th. And I plan to be in attendance of it. Because of the scale of this, I was just asking if any of the BOC would like to be involved to weigh in on that. I know at our last meeting with Representative Levy, we did have a representative from the Board of Commission in Umatilla involved. And just to make sure I stay in the right path and also show that the interest is on this. So I just wanted to let you know what the current efforts are. We've reached out to several different parties, some more successful than others. We do realize that there are several counties that have ports that are very concerned about some of this legislation. And we anticipate that representatives from the ports will be at this meeting on Monday. And so it should be a full spectrum of representatives discussing kind of a reconciliation between HB 2377 and 2725. So I plan to attend. It would be on Monday.
January 27th is what you said.
Yeah, just seeing if I got the time there. I didn't put that on here. It's at 2:30. If any of the commissioners would be available, I'd be happy to forward the invite.
Do we want to settle that? Do one of us want to say, yeah, we will be there?
I would-
Ride soccer?
I would really like to be there.
Okay.
I'm gonna be out of town, so.
I-
Yeah.
And I don't know if this would any way hook up with AOC or not. but-
I've already been talking to AOC quite a bit regarding this issue. Yeah.
Good.
And
So I think you're the logical one to be there then. Okay.
All right. The other thing, just as far as legislative updates, since this is my last action, February 10th is the AOC's legislative day, when they host a meeting. It's from 3 to 6 in Salem. All the state they invite all the commissioners and that to that, and state legislators come to that and kind of rub shoulders. Just wondering if that would be something that the BOC would be interested in attending as individuals or as a group. We could notice it just as a gathering. Since it's with AOC, it doesn't trigger the public meetings rules. But, just wanted to get that on your radar if you're interested in that. We can talk about that more as we get closer to it.
Thank you, Matt.
All right, any more questions on that, on the legislative updates? Okay, we'll move on to 6F, Wolf Depredation Advisory Committee. See claim recommendations, that's Valerie.
So, the wolf depredation in Morrow County for this past year, they've had, I believe, 5 confirmed depredations. And of course, livestock producers have had to really increase their preventative measures, hazing, range riding, etc. The county was awarded $8,000 for preventative measures. And the Wolf Depredation Advisory Committee, their recommendations are to allocate $5,000 to Lightning Bolt Cattle Company as they've had the most depredations of anyone in the area. $1,000 to John Qualls, $1,000 to Paul Proudfoot, and $1,000 to Brian Thompson.
Were those the only applications that were received?
There was a fifth application.
But we ran out of money.
Um,
The only reason I guess I'm asking is, other than the first one, all the others were members of the committee, so just from the optics, if there were several others that were not approved and they were.
there was one other one that wasn't approved. Who was it? That was Mabin. I believe their reasoning was Mabin was the landowner, not the cattle producer.
Okay.
The cattle are just on leased land owned by Mabin.
Questions of Valerie? Okay, suggested motions to distribute compensation funds in the amounts recommended by the Wolf Depredation Advisory Committee. Do I hear a motion for that?
I would make that motion.
Second,
I second it.
moved and seconded for the discussion. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
All opposed? Motion carried. Thank you, Valerie. And that concludes our business, and we'll start with our department reports. Juvenile Department report. Christie, she just came in, so. hello.
Perfect timing, look at that.
Technical timing.
Had to run down the hall. Good morning, Commissioners. Christy,
Morning.
Kenny with the Juvenile Department. You probably have the written that I've submitted, but just a few updates in our world. George and I attended a juvenile justice summit virtually online. This was hosted by the OJD or excuse me, the Oregon Judicial Branch. Try not to do so many acronyms by state courts. So great opportunity. It was about 4 hours of a summit that they had a keynote speaker. Her name is Elizabeth Kaufman from University of California. Speaks to specifically this one was tapered toward juvenile and like brain development and how obviously kids are a lot different than adults. And when it comes to them committing certain offenses, we want to really take into account where they are mentally and equate that to an appropriate punishment or accountability for those kids. So a lot of these trainings we go to really taper about brain development and trauma. Have kids been experiencing trauma in their life? Because that has a huge correlation to whether they end up in our system, how far they might penetrate into our system, and hopefully we can kind of head those off earlier to prevent further penetration into our system. So it was a great training. We continue to look for any of those trainings in our office so that we keep up to speed on the most current events, best practices. Another little update, there is in the works, the Medicaid expansion. So I don't know if you guys are familiar, but if a youth is placed into whether it's a juvenile detention facility, so like we utilize Norcor in the Dalles, or potentially further penetration like youth correctional facility, if that youth is on OHP or Oregon Health Plan, they will at some point lose their coverage. And so the Medicaid expansion is looking at making sure that there's not a lapse in coverage. If it's a short stint, so like a youth that might go to Norcor, they're only there for a day or 2 or 3, that may not end up getting lost. But if they're in there for an extended period of time, those youth may lose that. And then the county becomes responsible for any medications, any treatment that youth may need, whether it's medical or mental health. So they've been really working on trying to increase that so that this coverage continues to happen for that youth while they're in the facilities or in a detention facility, because that's a huge gap. And so legislation's been looking at trying to make sure that we get those kiddos covered, because it's also in the adult system too. So just a little update on that. And I did receive our juvenile crime prevention grant application. So we'll be looking at finishing that by the end of March. JCP is what that stands for. And those dollars are geared towards prevention services. So historically, we've utilized some programs Made to Thrive out of Hermiston. They serve both Umatilla and Morrow County youth. They help with activities, could be pay to play fees, shoes, things like that. They help any youth, maybe even tutoring. And so the goal of these dollars is to be keeping kids hopefully out of our system. And so we'll be working on the next biennial plan on how we spend that. We usually, historically, last biennium, we got $70,000 for the 2 years. They said to kind of expect that right now. They don't have the final numbers, but with budgets and finalizing things to kind of use that as a placeholder as our next 25-27 allotment. So I've just met with Jessie Miller. She's out at actually Hermiston. They're the Sweet Potatoes Closet. I don't know if you guys are familiar out of Hermiston, but they serve Umatilla Morrow kids, and they're designated towards more foster kids, so youth that might be in foster care. So I had a meeting with her about seeing if we might be able to help support them in our next plan, because they really help kids that are, picked up, moved to different foster placements, and usually when that happens, they might not have clothes.
Sweet
Potatoes Closet,
potatoes closet.
yeah.
We're located off of Main Street.
Yep.
Just down a couple building fronts from Banner Bank.
Yeah, so she gave me a little tour of the whole facility. They have a lot of stuff there, and they get to go shopping more or less. And so I'm gonna see about seeing if we can help maybe partner with them to help support those kids. These dollars are kids from 8 to 17 is the target range that these dollars need to do. And so looking at trying to do something a little different with our funds. Made to Thrive, unfortunately, as much as I want to keep supporting them, there is like a risk assessment that they have to do attached to these dollars. And they've expanded so much that they just haven't been able to complete the required documentation. So when I do the reporting, we have to have numbers and these assessments per kiddo. So we're looking a little differently to try to make sure we get those assessments done, but still support our kids in Morrow County. So just a little update there. So, and then I would just kind of give you a referrals that we've received this quarter. Majority were misdemeanors. We had 8 Class B misdemeanors, which most of those this quarter were disorderly conducts. So fights, there were some fights in the schools or fights outside in the community, and that's majority of where those came this quarter.
Okay.
Is there any questions?
More questions?
I don't think so. Thank you.
Okay, well, thank you very much.
Okay. Thank
Appreciate
you. Have a great rest of your
it.
day.
Okay, next up is our emergency management quarterly report. Steve.
Morning, Commissioners. Matt, Valerie, thanks for your help and congratulations on your new endeavor. Commissioner Peterson.
Thank you.
Were we able to get this to the Commissioners?
Yes.
Awesome, thank you. So you have what I submitted to Valerie. I do have some alibis or additions added to this. In the top section, I just want to remind folks that we're doing the annual CGS exercise on February 11th. This is not an audit year, so this will be a quick one-day hit and run. Feel pretty confident going to the planning board with Dr. Peterson. I think the biggest thing they're gonna hit us with is loss of comms completely. We've got a backup plan in place for that. Also working on the planning group for an exercise on the 19th and 20th for a mass casualty exercise. That'll be a combination of Morrow, Umatilla, and Union counties. 2 days. So the first day is training for leaders. Second day will be the application exercise. So I'm actually looking forward to that pretty good. Their view of mass casualty is different than my historical background. So it'd be pretty good. Interfacing with Red Cross, et cetera, and we'll set up those evacuation sites for the initial response until all the troops hit the ground. NQS, an acronym, but a National Qualification System, which involves the ICS certs. Matt, thank you. I've got the certs coming in already. In conjunction with that, so I'm gonna move this one out of the continuing education. We've been able to arrange for ICS 402. So that is National Incident Management System Training for elected leaders, senior officials, and appointees. So you'll see an email from me later on today. Matt, they've given me a last week in February, first 3 weeks in March. Right in February seems to be pretty busy across the board, so maybe moving it to March, wherever that helps. So I'm pretty excited about that, and they are willing to come to Hefner for that training.
And that's an in-person training.
Yes, sir. Yes, sir. But we can knock that out in one day. They understand our limitations and our needs, so they're working with us on that. So pretty excited about that. The outreach continues, right? That's a fluid piece with some of the same stuff. The only add I would have currently getting involved with WRGIC, which is our communications and our interoperability groups. is planning for the next exercise. That's a big exercise on an annual basis. We have some EMs that don't have a communications background, so we're getting up to speed. Currently, right now, in I would call it trifecta, but we're doing 4 counties, Morrow, Union, and Baker, to establish a formal ICS 205, which is our comm plan with all of the frequencies, so we're all on the same page. To include NIFOG, which are basically unsecure national frequencies for an emergency when you bring multiple agencies in across county lines. So the first portion of that, identifying the freaks to include Aries, which is our HF partners, has been completed and reviewed, and now we're moving forward with that. So that should be done fairly quickly as well. Also on exercise, we've completed our initial planning meeting for a exercise at Lamb Weston. We identified some gaps in their safety issues. This would be with regards to a roof rescue in conjunction with Bourbon PD. That's the only piece that they had a gap in their safety piece, and that's at the packing plant over there. Hazmat, basically the filtrations, all the equipment on top of the roof for their hazmat room. Continuing education is there. And then the grants, the HMEP, so that's for 39K. That's in conjunction with the LEPSI. As the application was approved, thank you, Matt. We're waiting on some adjustments from OSFM, so we can move into a final approval arena and pull the trigger on that. We've had our initial meetings on how to forward that through. My initial concern with that, quite frankly, was the request for refunds or RFRs, but coming through OSFM holding those funds, I don't have an issue with the bureaucracy that we see with some of the other grants and turning those dollars. Again, the Hanford IGA and CGS exercise, those have all been approved on paper, signed across the board, so I think we're tracking that. And then finally, the HSEP, which would be the physical security grant upgrades for this facility. Again, an initial application's approved. We're waiting for some adjustments on language, and then we'll move forward. We're getting ready to close out our NVG grant, and we're still waiting on FEMA for our UAV grant approval. As frustrating as that one is specifically, it's my understanding we're the only one in Eastern Oregon that's that far down the road. FEMA hasn't even given initial approval. So they approved it initially. They wanted us to fill in some gaps with regards to the plan, maintenance, training, cost, et cetera. We jumped on that the very same week and got that completed. So I continue to press that button, but we'll see how it goes. And that's all I have, gentlemen, pending any questions.
Not a question, but a comment. I just really appreciate the outreach that you've been doing. Thank you.
Well, it's nice to see you in all the meetings too. Thanks, Gus. Gentlemen.
Thank you very much. Good. Next up is the public transit square report. And Matt, can you introduce our?
You know, I'm having a brain freeze on his last name, but Steve is a really good guy.
Maybe, okay.
So, yes, so we have just hired our new transit manager, our public transit manager, Steve Davis. And he comes from us from the Tri-Cities areas where he's had more than a decade of experience in public transit. I wasn't directly involved in the interviews for him. That was something that Vincent and other staff members were part of it. My first engagement was with him was very positive, and he's been on staff since actually this is his 8th day at work, and I came in on January 13th, and he's already jumped in and sent me an email on funding and a few changes that he'd like to discuss in the future. But we really do appreciate not only his experience in dealing with transit. He's dealt with all different levels of transit up there in the Tri-Cities area, so aware of federal and state grants. But he's a really jovial and outgoing individual. And so it's really neat to, as I've officed up here every once in a while, and just see his engagement with the drivers and the dispatchers and that. He brings a breath of fresh air, and hopefully with his experience and his outlook, and we can have him engage with some of our stakeholders, readdress some of the quirks with our system, and help strengthen us for better times. So hopefully that's set you up on a high enough pedestal. But we're
Okay.
really excited to have Steve as part of our team.
Yeah, thank you. Welcome aboard.
Thank
So
you.
Go ahead, give your report.
Well, unfortunately, being day 6 of work, I don't have a quarterly report to
Okay, we
present.
understand.
I am working on it. I'm utilizing the information that was previously shared in the past. I'll have it ready for you at the next meeting. But at the same time, if there's specific information that that you're looking for to be presented, I'm more than happy to share that. A little bit about my background, if that's okay. I spent
Yes.
14 years at Ben Franklin Transit. Prior to that, I was a mobility therapist, so I built kind of high-end mobility devices, things that people, drove with the sip and puffs or with their eyes. I did a lot of medical justification writing. You kind of utilize that skill, much like anybody who's been in the healthcare. It's a tough business to be in when you're trying to care for someone and insurances are kind of dictating that care. So I thought, where do I transition these skills? I honestly thought I was just gonna be a dial-a-ride bus driver, right? So I thought I'll transition into transit. Went in it as low-level management as a supervisor. Spent 6 years as that, 5 years as the assistant director of operations, a year as the marketing director, and a year as the safety and training director. The last year I spent as the director of Mid-Columbia Meals on Wheels, which was a fabulous opportunity to see how nonprofits work. I've realized that I'm not a salesperson. I thought I'd be going in and managing logistics of food being delivered, when really they wanted me, to fundraise $1.5 million. And so that wasn't in my skill set, I guess. So I'm super excited to be here. I really feel like I've been placed in a situation with a team that's ready to go. I was always apprehensive as a smaller transit, like, what am I walking into? What knowledge do they have? And aside from some tweaking and finding an opportunity to utilize the tools we have, we're still, from my early estimation, kind of doing half paper, half softwares, is really identifying how we can have that information all in the tools that you guys have afforded us to have, so we can make sure that the information we're providing is accurate. But without any questions, I would. Go back and-
No. Thank you very much.
So with the Transit Advisory Committee, and this was before you came on board, I know there was discussion about relocating some of the offices down to the public health building. Has that happened, or is that still?
It is happening, yes. So the building is being modified to accommodate us. The physical renovations are being done now, so we'll hopefully be over there soon.
We actually, it was your first day on the job, we took you over there, and they're already adjusting. So we're under construction. Facility said 2 weeks. I haven't been over there to check out. Have you been?
Yeah, I was there yesterday. I made a slight modification.
There you go. Start taking this manager to the head, so. But, yeah, so it's gonna be on that west side where the WIC, office had been operating out of. We've opened up a storage area and, made that into where the dispatch will be sitting, and then there's an office that, are you and Patrick still sharing
Yeah,
that
we'll
office?
identify it.
And so, it does allow them to have a restroom, it reduces the size of that, well, the restrooms for the drivers specifically, so they can. Yeah, it is required, but it's interesting because we haven't had a facility that was readily available, that the drivers on their route could use. And so this allows them to have a restroom there. We will have a small sitting area for drivers to be able to take their break there. And the conference room is reduced in size, but they are also using that kind of as a storage. We cleared all that out, made it much more viable conference room. So hopefully when it's all done, we'll give the commission the heads up and you can come take a look at that. Once that's done, and IT's all taken care of, we'll be taking the dispatch there, moving those over, and we will likely have a little bit of construction to do an office where the dispatch is, to
to accommodate some of the needs we'll have up here in Oregon. So.
Okay, real good. Any further questions? Okay, thank you very much.
Thank you.
Yep,
Thank you.
I appreciate it. Okay, next up is our Justice Clerk quarterly report, and Glenn, let's see.
Thank you. I was up for timing. I just finished it in rain minutes. Great. You have my written quarterly report. I'll have to answer any questions. However, I still have to point out how pleased I am. We were up to 57 people in this quarter that for the year that we got driver's licenses for. And I can tell you, having just recently spent some time in DMV in Hermiston, that's not a small feat. It's hours spending time in there, but so we have another 57 individuals who are now licensed, lawful, insured drivers in our county. What I expect to see in the future, I expect to see our numbers continue to climb a little while on that, and then hopefully they're going to decrease because we're not going to have any more or as many people, because we'll get them all licenses and get them up and becoming law-abiding citizens.
Yeah, I'd like to commend you for that. I think I said it before. I think that's a great program, you know.
Yeah.
It's more than just punishment, it's helping people get straightened out.
Yeah, and some of them, some are real easy, and others, we stretch them out for several months, working with them. And quite honestly, a lot of times it just takes that extra nudge to go. My standard is I would rather see you spend this money getting a license and paying for your insurance than paying me a fine, because I'm just gonna keep seeing you in here. So let's work together on it, and so far it seems to be going, and I'm very, very pleased with it.
Do you have a percentage of how often folks are using that, just out of curiosity?
We don't keep track of that, because sometimes we'll end up with people just saying, I wanna pay my ticket, I wanna go.
Yeah.
But I would say we're over 75%.
That's pretty darn good.
Is what we've been seeing on it.
Okay, that's great.
So that part is, I mean, real good. Most people, they'll take advantage. Some of the people, they have so many strikes against them from their past that it's beyond what I can work with. Like they're suspended and they're going to be for the next year and a half, some things like that. But a lot of things we can work with and make it come. One of the other things I'd like to point out though is, we're looking at it, is where our cases are climbing. And just from the last time, we went up 129 cases, that was last fiscal year, and I didn't notice it that much the last fiscal year for the state, but we are really noticing it our fiscal year. Since it's really moved up, and I attribute that, I say in my notes, to an increase of police presence. We have more officers on the road now and everything that are being trained up, and they're coming online. I think the sheriff's office told me that to expect to see a lot more numbers as far as traffic tickets and everything else, as their officers are getting trained up and they're fully staffing. So we're gonna get busier and busier on that. But there again, I mean, really the goal for everybody is to see low numbers, because that means everybody's complying. So
would you say you would expect something similar to the driver's license thing, where we might see sort of a climb and then hopefully we should see a decline after people adjust to, I mean, I'm not used to any sheriff being on my road, I'll tell you that.
Yeah, I think, yeah, we will be seeing a lot more increases and everything else, and then at the very least, we expect to see it level off. And quite honestly, because the whole goal is to gain compliance. And as you become and get compliance in an area and everything else, and the sheriff's office can speak to this, then you don't have to pour as many resources in it. You just have to be able to maintain the compliance, and then you can start moving out. I always likened that to when you're out driving around and you're driving in a city, if you're driving in Hermiston and stuff like that, you come to a stop sign, what do? You stop, because you know chances are more likely than not, you're gonna get pulled over if you don't. But when you're out in Timbuktu, and you come across this one stop sign that you haven't seen anything of in miles and miles, what do people tend to do? They just look both ways and zip on through. So it's the compliance and the knowing that we're going to get enforced and everything else. So it makes us voluntarily come to the, abide by all the rules and regulations.
Okay, any other questions of Glenn? Thanks a lot. We appreciate it.
Thank you.
Yeah. Have a good day. Okay, next up is our planning department. Camera.
Good morning, gentlemen.
Good morning.
With me today, I have Caitlin Kennedy, our compliance planner. So I like to invite other staff because a lot of work goes through the office and it's not just my work, so. So for your update this month, I'll just summarize what's in your packet. As you know, we appointed 2 new planning commission members, Stephen Hinseth from Irrigan and Michael Seymour from Boardman. We're looking forward to working with them. They'll have their first hearing next Tuesday. Doing some onboarding with them, and then they sort of learn trial by fire and listen a lot until they understand what's going on. In December, we had a planning commission meeting here. Caitlin's been working on these temporary permits for people who have trucking businesses in a residential zone. It's a Band-Aid fix, giving those people some more time to find a permanent home for their businesses so they could continue and not shut down their business. We're still not sure at the end of those permits, which is 2 or 3 years, what's gonna happen, except they do know that they'll have to move those businesses.
Is there any idea on if people are actually moving, or is everybody just sort of hoping that the Band-Aid is permanent?
I think a little bit of both. What's your thought?
Yeah, I think going before the BOC kind of makes them realize that no, there is an end here, and if we don't comply with the conditions set forth, then we can take that away. And, nobody wants to do that. But unfortunately, there are repercussions. And Boardman has been very vocal, especially in the West Glen area, as it's within the urban growth boundary, that they're not going to allow the trucking businesses. So, projecting into the future, whether this, gets annexed into Boardman or not, there has to be other arrangements made.
Are there any ideas on what those could be? Is it a good luck scenario, or is there?
It's there's not a lot of resources that we can assist with per se, because, we can say buy a piece of property in light industrial or general industrial or something that's going to allow you to have business operations, especially with 10-wheelers and trailers and stuff like that. But if you don't have the money or the connections, then that's gonna take time. And we just want to give people the opportunity to find that.
And we have reached out to the port. The port, because they own a lot of industrial property, they're not really excited about being a landlord to manage a piece of property with multiple trucking businesses, but they said they would be receptive to lease it, for example, or sell it to a single landowner who then would subcontract. There's an interesting dynamic. No 2 trucking business owners are alike, right? They kind of like their own independent thing that they have. So we've been providing resources to them as we can. A year and a half ago, we had an open house work session here with all kinds of resources around for those landowners to look at. It wasn't until we said we have to be very serious about code enforcement that we found this temporary Band-Aid fix. There are some other landowners. I mean, I did a year ago direct outreach to several folks, even to some of the large farms who could permit those ag commodity trucks to park on their property. Even if they're subcontractors, there's a permit path forward for that. Commercial use in conjunction with farm use. So it's not like we just said, here's your temporary solution, you're on your own, but it's a challenge. And the price of industrial property
It's a challenge.
very much so.
Yeah.
I know Matt and I chatted once about a county-owned piece of property, and maybe we could allow that, but it really is pretty, a conflict for a county. We're doing code enforcement on one hand and a conflict to allow people to park or lease from the county, but there are other, there are other properties that are available. It's just not what folks are doing right now, and that's why they live where they live and wanted that investment. But there are people with, privately owned industrial properties that are well suited and already permitted for a trucking business. Commissioner Winholtz has one. He doesn't park his trucks in a residential zone. Those are in a commercial piece of property. So we don't have an abundance of those. We did do a rezone just outside of Irrigan. Were you here then? A year or so ago?
I was not.
Okay. It was contiguous to other commercial properties. So that was one fix. But it was a permanent fix for one Irrigan resident. Yeah. I always say that, code enforcement is kind of the Achilles heel of planning. So if you don't have a decent code enforcement program, you're not gonna have a good planning program. So it's very tricky. I'm certainly receptive to ideas though.
Well,
so-
I just wanted to get a full picture. Thanks.
Yeah, for sure. Happy to visit with that. I'm also just noted the land use hearings, the 5 hearings we had with the board to update our robust code enforcement. It will be a while before we do another code enforcement update, except the current legislative session has 70 some odd bills.
That may-
Usually those, that's right, usually those whittle down to a handful or so. Additionally, the State Department of Land Conservation and Development is in the process of updating several administrative rules that will again require more code updates, primarily in the exclusive farm use section. Daisy Goebel, our principal planner, and as you know, she and her husband Greg left the county and are back in Salem. Daisy does continue to work remote, part-time, as a part-time employee for us. We are slowly weaning her out of that, hopefully not too quickly. My report here said that we are in a recruitment process, but actually we've hired somebody and he will start on February 10th. Yes, he has a master's degree in public administration, 5 years with the county in Idaho, and is currently at a small city up in Washington. So we'll have to train him about Oregon, train him about Morrow County, but I think we really lucked out.
It's great.
Yeah, thank you. Lots of energy projects. Some of this is carryover from previous updates, but I keep it here because it does take from time to time a fair amount of not just my time, but other planners. So in the past few weeks, we've had lots of calls about the Wheat Ridge project that's under construction. The compliance on that is not our responsibility. We're sort of in second position on that. The state agency is in. Commissioner Winholtz understands that process really well, I think, the state, so we refer them to the state agencies. When it comes to the weeds, that's complicated. Right now, we don't have complaints about weeds. It's mostly about erosion and traffic, et cetera. So I've connected several people with state agencies and the developer, and the developers are usually more than willing to come. They don't live in the area, so they'll contact the contractor, et cetera. But that is, yeah, it's just something that's ongoing. And then at the bottom of that is a link to the state agency citing process and the permit guide. I never know when somebody's going to pick up a newsletter from a board's packet. And we also include it in the planning commission packet. So I keep that there, and also the link to the projects that are in Morrow County. So 4 years ago, Stephen and I sat down and went and listed every renewable energy project, those that are permitted and constructed, not permitted, underway, state, et cetera. So that's interesting. We have a pre-application meeting for a large standalone battery storage facility coming up. The technology is outside of my my scope of knowledge, but that's the newest kind of trend of energy projects. And not in the month of January or December, although we wrapped up some permits. We permitted a couple of new transmission lines, so we have new development transmission usually follows. Sometimes it's about simultaneously. So the next topic is the Heritage Trail. We are continuing to work with JUB engineers. We met on January 9th, did an update on the project. They have an alignment and some improvements. Vince Guerrero is involved in that committee. So it's a nice interdepartmental effort, if you will, to look at the Heritage Trail, both as a recreational trail and also as an asset in terms of tourism. We have an open house scheduled, it says in here tentatively, but we made that firm on February 12th at the Sage Center. And Clint and Shoemake in our office has been doing a lot of the coordinating and heavy lifting on this project. It's an opportunity to get residents in our area an opportunity to provide comment on both the alignment, the standards, et cetera. And Clint is also working with the maintenance team on taking over where Landon left off on installing a couple of the interpretive panels. For GIS, Stephen and I both put a note in here. He has been working on a story map for the Love Guama. That's the Lower Umatilla Basin Groundwater Management Area Committee, and Commissioner Peterson, when we meet later today, I'll fill you in on the meeting that happened last Friday. Courtney Warner Kroll from the governor's office mentioned several months ago that she had been hopeful that we could have a single place, a story map to tell the public everything to do with the Guama. So there's the environmental component, there's the public health component, there's the research project looking for solutions for drinking water. So I said, you know, we have this guy who's really talented and maybe he could at least do that. I don't think we'll be the permanent host, but we did a kind of a dry run at the meeting last Friday. Really well received. We still have to add information about the roadmap project. We were busy including everybody else's update to that. Stephen also is, I don't know if we started yet, but we met with Matt last week to do some coordination of population projections. It's always problematic. You have your census every 10 years, and then Portland State University, the official demographer for the state, issues projections. It's a real challenge with small towns when you know you've issued 100 permits, for example, like Boardman, and PSU says, well, we don't show that you've grown. And of course, projections are tied to important things like funding. In the planning world, they're tied to things like an urban growth boundary expansion. So
is there a way we could file some sort of protest? Seems like the wrong word, but like,
yeah,
you know, say, no, it's absurd. We have 100 permits. We have physical proof that we have more people. That's absurd to say. Because the last one said Boardman shrunk, didn't it? Or something, it didn't grow anything close to as much as it actually has. It was,
It included very marginal growth, and the city managers originally wanted to do some letters protesting it, and I was able to coordinate a call which led to us working with Portland State, and they're doing kind of a survey in certain blocks where they can show you only list this many in this block. We actually have this many. And so they're going through that right now.
Good.
Each city's doing it. We're not really worried about it too much on the south, the end of the county, because
that's probably more
not as
accurate.
much growth, but
Yeah.
Boardman and Oregon have definitely had that. The cities right now are reaching out for some assistance with GIS to do that. So we're on that process. Hopefully we'll have some good response and see a population adjustment in Portland State's
I
report.
remember seeing that and being just, nobody had come out here when they made their estimates. That was for sure.
Yeah, but you know, showing actual building permits, land use permits are one thing. That next step is a building permit. So building occupancy permits issued by the building department. I mean, there's proof you have a new physical structure and the vacancy rate is really close to zero. I mean, it's unhealthily low in our communities. So Stephen's gonna help with that, help navigate the process. At our county administrator meetings, we've just sort of touched the the topic of coordinating population projections, because there's a lot of uses of population data throughout the county. So we have a use for it again in the planning department. Other departments use it for funding, all kinds of things. So we're kind of talking about how and where that repository would be. In lots of counties, it is the planning department, but that's ultimately Matt's decision. We do have a nice program and a data person, Stephen, who can help with that. So Kate's here to talk some about code compliance.
So I've been here just over 6 months, taking over this position. And we have easily over 70 open violations right now, throughout the county. And again, working to rectify those with certain property owners regarding commercial trucking. Not everybody wants to talk to code enforcement. Yep, so sometimes getting in touch with those individuals can get a little tricky. Posting on their fence, trying not to get bit by the dog, those kind of scenarios. I will say the sheriff's office has been very helpful in assisting where we need it. So far, I've thankfully only had to take probably 5 people to IJC with Glenn, the judge, and he's been really great working with them. He's very tough but fair and in the best way. Because I don't want to issue, $880 citations per day of the violation, because that I wouldn't be able to live up to that. And so working with the Justice Court, working with the Sheriff's Department, working with them planning on different transportation projects. It's been very busy, but very fun. And I've also got to work with Sandy on our litter voucher, which has started. That went into effect on January 4th, which I'm excited to say that we have about 15 that we've been able to give out so far in the last 2 weeks. Now, granted, that's out of 1,400, but I'm excited that people are calling and they're interested, and that I'm getting a positive response when I offer it to property owners, and they're like, yeah, I'll take one. And I'm like, okay, that works for me. So
What do you think is a bigger problem? I remember Commissioner Don Russell had tried to set up a program where he was gonna bring in a car. That didn't, something hung that out of his legal thing or something. And then it came out that, is cars or RVs probably a bigger problem?
that's hard, because people will collect cars, and then they'll collect motorhomes and campers and RVs, and they can use them for storage or
And I don't
companions.
mean so much, I'm sorry to interrupt you, I don't mean so much them illegally living in them, but they're just junk.
Yeah, they're just
Yeah,
collecting
okay.
them.
And getting rid of junk RVs is, we're not
Hard.
sure the
That's what I
solution.
heard.
We did see that there's a place on Highway 395 that is selling used,
There is.
heavily used RVs.
There is a bill currently going through the process. I don't remember which one it is, at the state level, that the Association of Oregon Counties has been very involved with on getting funding for dealing with abandoned RVs, because this is a statewide issue.
Yeah. And Caitlin learned some about that at one of the conferences she went to. So she belongs to the
Oregon Code Enforcement Association. Yeah, and it's like you said, it's a statewide issue, especially on the coast. I mean, here too, but it's real hard to get rid of them. Calling the transfer stations, they want it completely dismantled. They want it tested for asbestos. They want all the appliance ripped out of it, before they'll even take it, and then they charge by the ton. So
Yeah, it's an extremely expensive problem that nobody wants to deal with.
yes.
Yeah.
I'll follow up and see. It might be on the list of stuff I'm looking at. I just haven't got to it yet, though. That's excellent. And then we included 2 of the handouts that Caitlin developed.
Yeah, I only included just the little pamphlet that we're handing out with the transfer station voucher. I didn't really want to post the voucher online just in case people wanted to print it out, make copies. So I kind of kept that within office. But we do have a little just educational piece that offers information on the transfer stations, you know, phone numbers, links to the code enforcement ordinances, and then a Good Shepherd vehicle donation program, which is running with Liz Marvin. And you can donate, you can choose to donate if you have a clean title, a boat, an RV, or a car, and they'll make the arrangements to come pick it up, and you can get tax deductible receipts. And that's run through Good Shepherd. Just kind of an idea of providing resources.
Yeah, give people options for better ways to do things. Yeah.
Thank you. So I think, now we're talking about water. I just noted here, we've finished up work with the Water Advisory Committee, and the board adopted a resolution supporting the recommendations of the Water Advisory Committee. I have some next steps to do on that. One is well underway with the Clean Water Consortium that Chair Sykes is leading. I mentioned the Love Guama meeting. There was one just on January 17th. Since the state in September adopted the nitrate reduction plan, the local committee, the role of that local committee, you're the voting member, I'm your alternate, Commissioner Peterson. Our role is really just to sort of meet quarterly or so and hear their updates. The next meeting might be a few months out. I think there will be more give and take dialogue about what the role of the local committee will be. And that committee has been in place for 30 years, but it was the state's opinion that not enough had been done to reduce nitrates in the groundwater, so they developed the Oregon Nitrate Reduction Plan. So more to kind of stay tuned to see what the local committee role will be.
And will that be the local committee sort of deciding that, or is that the state gonna say, we've taken over, we appreciate you guys, you can sit over there in that corner?
That policy decision is probably rests with you, I would say. It might be a bit of both, and that meeting that we had chatted about, meeting with our counterparts in Umatilla County, that's probably a place to have a discussion. I know the agriculture community in particular is very eager to continue to be proactive. I mean, their position is that the very proactive things that they've done, they use input such as nitrogen and fertilizer and chemicals much more sparingly and much more precise than was done 50, 60 years ago, particularly with, you know, precise precision agriculture. A lot of fingers are pointing still, playing the blame. It won't be cleaned up in my lifetime. I doubt it would be cleaned up in yours, maybe your newborn child, you know, I don't know. Yeah, okay, there you go. Yeah, so anyway, that's our role with Love Guama. I did make some clean copies of a handout that I attached on the roadmap project. When we come up with an outreach material, it has, I don't know, 6 or 7 touches on it. This was really put together by Consor, which is the sub-consultant of GSI. And the one that I uploaded as an attachment to your packet, it was pointed out to me this morning, it had a typo. This is already a little bit outdated because one of the contacts at Morrow County Public Health, Anna Pañaro, is no longer with the county. She moved on. So we'll have to, I think that phone number will still go to somebody at the public health. But we have had increasingly more interest in the steering committee meetings. Our 5th meeting is coming up on February 13th. And the steering committee meetings are open to the public, but by design, they weren't really to be the primary source of public engagement. Rather, they are open to the public so the public can listen in. That committee is really a professional and technical oversight of where GSI and HDR engineers are going with the research they are. It's a smart group. It's 2 PhD scientists on there, another highly trained water soil researcher from one of the area's larger farms, and some other folks, and then Joe Fumaro from Morrow County and myself. We at the most recent meeting in December, we had several people asking about a number of water-related initiatives, and it's a challenge. So that's why with Concert, we put together this frequently asked questions. It'll be on our website. It's a handout up at the front counter. If we go to fairs or other events, we have this, and I think it does a good job of capturing where we are. At least this research roadmap project. I took it with me to a meeting. It was Oregon Water Resources Department had a meeting to talk with irrigators about think about the name of the program. And I attended and had this, and I also was able to sign up 3 new people who are willing to have their well tested as part of this research roadmap project. That's not my primary responsibility. Other folks were out of town, so I just showed up at that. Also, to do additional outreach at the February meeting, the 5th meeting of the steering committee, we'll be talking more about the draft communication plan. So it really is a communication plan about what's happening. And Ronan and I and Joe Famaro will also be presenting March 7th and 8th at the Farm City Ag and Home Expo. That's in Hermiston. It's an event really focused on rural landowners and farmers about science, technology, et cetera. It's another opportunity to reach an audience to talk about this project and to get their feedback about that. And Robin's also signed up to have a booth there. So we cross-train a smidge. So if people want to have their well tested for drinking water purposes, I send them over to Robin. If people are willing to have their well tested for the research project, they send them over to me. As you know, Matt's already reported on the SEP application, which wasn't the outcome we were looking for, but the door isn't completely closed on that. We did do some additional public engagement for the West Glen area, and with the 2 grants from Business Oregon, we'll be seeing more of that as well. And that Commissioner Peterson, that decision was made by the board last summer or fall. Don't remember the exact date, to say there are all these water efforts going on, but that West Glen neighborhood stood out as a neighborhood. It's a place for the county to put some resources. So we've been looking at that. And direct outreach to that community is difficult. I talked to the director of the REV program, Grace Donovan, and she's already working on an implementation plan to do some direct outreach there. It's a challenge if you want to meet with a neighborhood and you don't have a lot of technical information to share. If you talk to people and they don't have clean drinking water, they want clean drinking water. But if you don't have a solution to share, that's really difficult. So that's why the 2 Business Oregon grants that Matt and I've worked on, one of them is a preliminary engineering feasibility study, sort of a back of the napkin. What would it cost to do XYZ, extend city water? And Boardman has said, it's not our favorite thing to do, but we have water capacity and it is an option. So what would that cost is what a landowner would need. So as soon as we have that information, then Rev and Grace's team can do outreach directly with those neighborhoods. And they might not want that at all, and nobody wants to pay for something in addition. So that provides another challenge there. So I'll move and conclude with transportation planning. We have 2 long-range transportation planning efforts in 2 different phases. The Tower Road interchange with Interstate 84, exit 159. Caitlin is helping be the project manager on that, since we're still waiting for a full-time principal planner. We had our first technical advisory committee meeting yesterday. Always impresses me that when you bring other people in the room, they pointed out things hadn't really occurred to me, like, why don't you expand that study area? And we thought we were being proactive by looking at the direct study area for the access between the interstate and all the way down to Boardman Airport Lane. We will have a a public outreach event in March, and we're working on scheduling that. So all those businesses along Tower Road will be notified and invited, and some of the adjacent property owners. Commissioner Winholtz, you'll be hopefully pleased to know that we had a robust discussion yesterday. Not just county staff, but others said, no, we need to include development in the exclusive farm use zone, because the model for these interchange studies is you don't consider impacts from farming, because typically it's pretty low. We have some exceptional development in the exclusive farm use zone. So how we capture that and they participate in things like access management or future improvements, that's now on the table. So it was a whole new approach for the consulting team, and ODOT was very supportive of that. Jacob from the port was also very supportive of that. And then we're also finalizing the scope of work for a more comprehensive countywide transportation system plan, which will probably start summer or fall, and it'll take a year and a half or so to complete. And a small piece of that, of our grant from the state, will be to include a very small planning project for the town of Lexington. They had applied, they couldn't award them both. They saw ours as a higher priority, so Katie Imes has been a great partner with us on that project. And I didn't include any legislative updates. I think probably tomorrow Matt's going to talk to the department heads about how we do that, but it is a long list, and as time allows, I will look at that list and bring
Well, there's only
those
a couple thousand,
bills. I know,
and
and
probably
like,
more since then.
yeah, right? Was yesterday the first official day of the session?
Like a week ago when they dropped.
A week ago, they dropped. Yesterday was they first actually started working. So
And depending on direction from Matt, it might be something I filter through you, Commissioner Peterson, when there are land use pieces of legislation that are of interest. I know there's one the board supported in the past. It didn't pass out of committee last session. It was allowing some flexibility in things like agritourism events, which particularly are smaller farms. It's a really nice value added income generation, kind of a lifestyle too, because they tend to be a lot of work. So I can filter those through you as well. Okay, very good. And we can do that this afternoon. So that concludes my update.
Could you go back to the battery facility? And let's talk, I want to talk briefly a little bit about
Okay.
that. Is that a total battery? No, I guess first tell me, where is it at in the county planning process?
We have not yet had a pre-application. So it's, that's either this Thursday or next Thursday. We have a pre-application with them. And it's different because it's not an energy generation project. And so which standards apply? We think we know. We've checked with the state to say, yeah, we think that's a utility facility necessary for, and that's how we would permit it. I don't know where our threshold begins and ends versus the state, so we're learning.
So it's not considered an energy facility, or it is?
It's not an energy generation facility.
I get that. It doesn't have any solar component at all, right?
And not that I know
Well,
of. I don't-
and where I'm going, of
Yeah.
course, is the SIP pilot, where's it gonna fall
Oh.
in there, see?
Interesting. Didn't even think about that.
it would likely be under SIP
That's what I'm
because it's
thinking,
not a
but-
solar generator. It's
Well, we have another one that was talking to us that was a $1 billion project, and half was battery and half was solar.
mhm.
And so, I mean.
The lines get blurry.
Huh?
Yeah.
Well, they don't get blurry, they get, okay, so the pilot program gets tax, or in lieu of taxes based on megawatts. Well, if half your $1 billion project, and you come in for tax abatement under the pilot, and half your $1 billion project is a battery, that seems to me it escapes property taxation altogether, to me. I mean, that's not in the planning, but,
Sure.
That's kind of getting out into another area, but
Uh-huh.
if you go, because that's how the pilot works, because when they first started, of course, there wasn't a big battery component. But you have a major part of your project, the asset value is in a battery, and you're only taxing the wind megawatt of it, you know, that's something that, I don't know, I just been thinking.
Or
about
you're
based
only
on that-
offering.
Based on the new person, the group that came and talked to us. So
Yeah, and I don't know where Mike is.
I
but it's
talked to
also-
Mike about this and he.
Good,
yeah,
okay,
so
great.
he-
Because your abatement might not apply to the batteries, right? It might only apply to the solar
Well,
facility.
that's what we, you know, that's what we were dealing with the new person who had, the new company who hasn't moved forward yet.
Uh-huh.
It was in the preliminary talks. Daisy was there and me. and
Oh, sure.
I forget who else, but, so I don't think, they haven't moved forward, but I was just trying to pre-think it out. What do we do? Do we, you know, how do we deal with these? Now you're saying we have a full battery. So I'm just trying to think, where are they gonna fall? And what's under the zoning, did you just say, tell us, is it allowed use? How big a facility is this, do you think? I mean,
Oh.
acreage wise?
I don't remember the acreage. Right at 100 acres and it's in an exclusive farm use zone.
It's not huge, but it's in a EFU. So is that an allowed use?
Well, that's when the state has agreed, at least for the moment, that it's a conditional use permit as a utility facility necessary for public service. It
So you
doesn't
think it might, I'm sorry, but you think it might fall under like Cardi?
under Cardi.
Generating.
Generating
As an
station?
energy
I don't-
facility.
I don't think so. It's not an energy generation project, so
Is it more like a transfer station? No,
almost more like a transmission line.
just line, yeah.
Yeah.
'Cause it's holding power and then it will, yeah.
Yeah, and I mean, the planning part of it, you have to deal with it. I was just trying to think ahead of where does it go if they're asking for tax abatement, where's it gonna fall?
So Dave, does the developer get to dictate what program they want, or do we get to dictate what program is available to them?
We
I
have
mean,
to
if-
approve, we have to approve any program.
So, I mean, if they come in and they want a pilot, and we tell them, no, you're gonna be a SIP, I mean. that's-
Oh, yeah, we can do that.
Part of the negotiations.
Oh, Mike's got his
Or we
hand
can do half and
raised.
half.
Oh, good.
And as the other aspect of it is like. Under the pilot program, I don't know if it was just how Morrow County had applied it. Or if it was written into the pilot program, is that there's a maximum by state law that you can charge per megawatt hour. And then there's kind of a threshold, and the maximum was always considered with battery storage is what the maximum was, and you know, if it was only solar only. Traditionally,
Different rates.
different rate,
Well,
but
Sunstone, we got the max to 7,000 a megawatt, didn't they? If I remember right, under the pilot.
Mike might know.
No, that's
Was
right.
it-
No, it's not planning.
Yeah.
I don't know why I was looking at you, I was just trying to.
Okay.
And I think, the last time I read it, I think they got a max,
so,
but no, when-
I don't remember, is there battery component to?
With Sunstone, yes.
yeah,
I thought there was.
yeah.
So.
Mike,
back
Oh,
to
there's
the-
Mike, yeah.
But back to the planning aspect of it, in the last couple of sessions, whether it was a short session or full session, wasn't there legislation that talked about battery storage that was separate from energy generation, but maybe that was more meant to that, so you had a parcel that was solar, and then, you know, a couple parcels away is actually where the battery storage was. Maybe that's what it was, but I think I remember something about some legislation dealing with battery storage.
I'll talk to
separate from
AOC and ask them what they're tracking
battery
right
storage.
now.
Yeah,
different
Mike,
from solar.
Mike, you wanna straighten us out on this?
Mike, you're unmuted.
Okay, so I'll back up to Commissioner Winholz's, one of his earlier questions was like, who dictates, you know, what program, if any, a project might get? And of course, it's ultimately up to the county. They don't even have to do anything if they don't want to. We don't necessarily, in the past, historically, we have not, you know, told a developer or a project what we want them to do. We've just let them come to us and said yay or nay, negotiated through it, or you know, the project never got built or they went somewhere else. So it is ultimately up to the county to decide. As far as the pilot program, I'm still trying to seek verification on the battery storage component from both DOR and Business Oregon. And I haven't gotten very far yet because I don't know that they know. We currently have two signed pilot agreements. I believe one is with battery storage and one is without. Maybe we have three. We have two with and two without, and two with and one without, excuse me. The two with the battery storage, we've negotiated the highest amount, the $7,000. And I believe the one pilot agreement we have that didn't have battery storage, they're at the lower amount, $5,500 a megawatt. So that's how we've treated them, the ones that the signed and executed agreements that we have currently. That makes sense.
Yeah, yes, it does. Thank you.
Mike's looking into it. So any questions or comments?
Yeah, that's all I got. So, thank you. Other questions? Thanks a lot. All right. Next up would be our sheriff's office monthly report. Ryan.
Morning, or afternoon.
It's still morning.
Brian Snyder, Under Sheriff, Morrow County Sheriff's Office. Things at the sheriff's office are status quo, sort of, but we got some updates. Our civil department's holding strong. They're fully staffed. Just normal day-to-day activities. Our parole and probation division's holding strong, fully staffed, and doing well. As you guys know, the dispatch division we're down 4, but we've held we started the hiring process and we're in the backgrounds to fill all 4 of those. We have an extensive background investigation that's done, so we're hopeful that they all 4 pass. If they do, that would put us fully staffed. One of them is a lateral that comes with us with about 17 years of experience, so we're super excited over that one. And our patrol division, we are setting it 4 patrol deputies short. We have hired, or sorry, we did a hiring process and we were able to pick 2 out of there. And they're in the halfway through the background investigation. It's looking promising, which would put us only 2 down. We have a lateral that has shown that has committed to us to fill the 3rd position, but unable to start until about May. So as long as nothing blocks that between now and May, we'll only be down 1. And potentially we have some more apps, so we could potentially be fully staffed in our patrol division this year. We are most of the ones that we've hired we do have 3 at the academy right now. Everyone else is made it to solo status, it's nice to hear some of the comments that they are starting to see more patrolmen out on the roads. We're able to fill all of our shifts a little easier, a lot less overtime, and a lot less call outs. We're back up to 24-hour coverage, 7 days a week. So things are going well there. And with these other ones that are in the 3 of them that are in patrol or at the academy now, 2 will hit the road. The other one's the Marine deputy. So we're only gonna, on patrol, we're only gonna see him 6 months out of the year. The other 6 months he'll be on the water, but that's a huge benefit. As you guys know, it's been a temporary position and or a seasonal position, and it was hard to fill and experience, especially with returning staff and experience. So I think it's going to benefit the county and the program immensely. We also were able to, in this last budget cycle, through your guys' approval, that we've made both our OHV deputy positions went from seasonal to fully staffed. We have 1 filled, and he's on the road now, and so he'll be going up to the park when it opens in May. And then we're looking for our second, which we may pull from our patrol division, but we'll get that filled as quickly as we can as well. So office day-to-day stuff is doing well. It's looking promising. So it's exciting to start getting those positions filled and seeing the numbers and starting to come in and seeing the benefit of having our staff back. Update on reminder. We got $100,000 we talked about from the CREZ funds that was designated or earmarked for the sheriff's office, which you guys or the committee or the commissioners approved. We earmarked 25,000 because we were in desperate need of 2 new 4-wheelers for our search and rescue program and a trailer. I'm happy to report that we have taken possession of those 2 new 4-wheelers and the trailer. They are a great addition to our search and rescue program. And the other 75 plus thousand, let me back up. We earmarked 25,000. We were able to get both machines in the trailer for, I believe it was just about 24,000. So it was under, not by much, but it was still under, and we got exactly what we needed and what we wanted. So that was exciting. And then the other 75,000 was that's the big update. We earmarked that towards trying to put that toward a range for Morrow County. That is fell through for several reasons: permits, location, stuff. We've been educated and found that where we wanted to put it, we cannot put it. So we are Matt and I are working on a couple ideas, and then potentially maybe with Boardman as well. So that 75,000 is just sitting there. Just wanted to update and then just make sure that it doesn't go anywhere, that we still have it. I don't know if we end up taking that 75,000 and putting it toward another need within the sheriff's office. Might be a good idea. I don't know about the range at this point. There's a lot of I don't knows, a lot of ideas, and I don't have anything to present today for that. We're trying to make sure we want to be responsible with that money and make sure it goes toward a need, such as like the search and rescue program. That was a dire need. It's a reminder, the 2 4-wheelers that were replaced was 2006s, and they had been used very well, but they were at the end of their life. And so that's what we want to do with the remaining funds, is not toward search and rescue necessarily, but toward an area that we need, that would help the general budget, help our budget, and fill a need, not necessarily a want. It's about all I got, unless you guys got questions.
I don't.
So I guess this probably ties into, you're talking about having a bunch of patrol deputies, and I guess my question is that towards the end of the year, did you guys have some kind of extra enhancement program going out on 730? Because I saw you had more people stopped within a week than I'd seen probably in 6 months. And there was times I think I saw one time in particular, I think I saw 2 deputies. Each of them had a customer.
So no, we didn't have any enhancements or programs. What we had is we started getting all of our deputies that were in training started getting going solo status in about the 1st of November. And so by December, all of our ones that were in FTEP, not the academy, but in FTEP, were finally made solo status. And so you're starting to see that benefit. The county is starting to see the benefit of our staff. And that was just a good day, apparently. So we haven't really seen an increase of citations. You are going to see the increase of traffic stops, but the citations are remaining about the same. We do push education over enforcement, but there's times where, education isn't, they're not getting a clue. And so we have to take it to the next step. But that is the goal, is to start seeing our deputies out more and more, and not so sporadic. As things are moving, our goal is to increase the visibility down south as well. So we shouldn't be hearing in about 6 months anyways, ballpark timeframe. everybody will be seeing them regardless of where they live.
So that means, Gus, you better follow the traffic lights.
I kind of wanted to follow through with that, follow up on that comment and,
No drifting on the corners.
no more drifting, no more rolling the stop signs.
There are no stops.
But we are trying to get that, but we gotta put our staff where the majority of our calls are. And when we're shorthanded, it's, unfortunately,
make
it
a
is up on the
decision.
north end.
Yeah.
But as we get, our staff, as we get fully staffed, we can meet all of our goals and dreams of getting that South County patrols, along keeping, not minimizing or losing any coverage on the north end, but we get to get those extra, not extra, but we start to get our staff back down south like we did years and years ago. So, yeah.
Thank you.
Any other questions, Brian?
No.
All right.
Again, thank you
Thanks,
for
sir.
the report.
Yeah, thank you.
Okay, I think the last one, treasurer's accounts payable, written reports only. Kevin's always is traditionally, so. Anybody know otherwise?
I don't see anyone else.
Yeah. Okay, I'm gonna call a 5-minute recess then, until we come back to correspondence. Okay, we'll call the meeting back to order. And next up is our correspondence.
No correspondence.
Next up is our commissioners' reports. Jeff, you got any?
So I guess one of the things when I did from last time, and I talked about being at the NEAC meeting, one of the things that I learned there that, and I did forward it to Eric, but it maybe be good for Matt to know too, is that they informed us that if the county has road updates that they want to do, they can post that to Trip Check.
Okay.
So like if we have, a road outage or, something, whether that be, my understanding was, even like a county road, or if we're seeing something
If
on one of
we're
the state
working-
highways through our area that they don't have posted as being something, but we can make posts to Trip Check.
Okay. Follow up with Eric on that.
Okay. And then the other thing is maybe I'll steal your thunder, Dave, but last Friday, the CREZ 3 did meet. We elected, basically, we kept the officers the same. And that's Joe Taylor is the chairman, right? And Dave is the vice chairman. And then we had $5 million to distribute. That was the infrastructure fee that the Amazon paid for the data center. It's going out by the airport. So each of the 3 sponsoring entities, the city, the county, and the port, taking $1 million, we put $500,000 be earmarked for the water consortium. The balance was distributed to the affected taxing districts based off of what their taxing rate was. So we'll have $500,000 for the water consortium to use as either matching for grants or some engineering or whatever.
I was really concerned about that because we did have 60,000 from the port, 60,000 from the county, because we're kind of working capital to get going, but it's, it's not a lot.
No.
So I was really glad when the CREZ 3 did that, because the way it'll work out is Matt's gonna be the manager and this will give him some working capital, because, yeah, anyway.
Good
I was glad to
ideas
see
need
that.
something to work with.
What's that?
Good ideas need something to work with.
Yes.
Yeah.
You
To get going.
kind of prime the pump a little bit,
Yeah.
If you apply for a grant, not only matching, but how do you get to the point where you're qualified to, or you have your stuff in order to apply for the grant? That costs money. So I was really pleased to see them do that. It's gonna get us off to a good start, I think. And, okay.
And I don't think I had anything else. I can't think of.
What I got to say, CREZ 2 meets tomorrow. Thursday, at 4:00. Pretty simple agenda. I set out the financials. I forget how much, I don't want to quote them out, but, there it is right there. No. I want to say, anyway, there's money to be distributed. And, so that starts at 4. So for everybody's. This consortium will be official, will go live on February 3rd. And get our meeting scheduled for February 4th. There's a organizational meeting but I'll be sending, I'm gonna try and get a pretty extensive email list. I don't, whoever ends up as chairman but when I send out the first meeting notice, because I want to be as open as possible on this and get a Zoom. Valerie will set me up with the Zoom, yeah, she has before. So to go into it with everybody open-eyed, anyway, that's on consortium. I guess that's about all I got. Yeah.
Okay.
Anything-
I attended the Association of Oregon Counties County College first session this past weekend. Just brief overview of things that we touched on. We covered identifying strengths and how to use those in an organization and to use individuals' strengths within an organization as a team to propel forward. I thought that was really an excellent, positive way to look at building teams and public meeting law, which is important and frustrating. And then spent a whole day on OSU Extension and how they work in Oregon and the county's role with Oregon Extension. And it was cool to hear and learn about. Oregon does a lot of things not well, but the OSU Extension program is something that Oregon does really well. So that was fun to learn about. That's pretty much it for me.
I guess there was one other thing to report on is that Dave and I both last Wednesday attended it's called the Industrial Symbiosis meeting that was really spearheaded by Debbie Rady. It was a product of over the summer, I believe. She and Lisa Middlesdorf from the port had gone to Denmark and saw how they link waste streams from one industry as a beneficial input to another industry, and how you can take what's considered a waste product from one and be beneficial to the other. I guess some of my takeaway was, it wasn't really a news flash, but the port is doing a bunch of that down there already, such as steam coming from the Coyote Springs is used in the processing for some of the food processors down in the facility there and different things. Not that there isn't always opportunities to identify more things like that, but.
Well, 3 Mile Farms, they are moving on forward. Their land use application has been approved, and they've got an application into CREZ 3 to add another, it's either a digester or a generating plant down.
It's a digester and.
Digester
And then they
with
want to
a
take
line to go with it.
put the methane into the natural gas to make renewable natural gas.
Too,
Yeah.
which has been going on a long time, where they lay that French pipe down in there every time they put another layer out there, and it just sucks all the methane out. And what are they doing? Are they generating electricity now? Or are they drying
Yeah,
onions,
so
or
the-
what are they doing?
Capturing the methane is a part of the DEQ requirement. And so their options are either to just purely flare it off, but they had put some, basically their cat diesel engines that were modified to run on landfill gas. And so they generate electricity. The big cat engines are hooked up to giant generators, and then what they call the water jacket heat. So, it's an internal combustion engine, so you have to have water in it. So in order to just, instead of having giant radiators out there, they run the water, because they're literally next to the fence across from what used to be Cascade Specialties. I think it's O5 or something now, the onion dehydrator. So they take that hot water. No, it'll come out of engine like that, probably around 210 degrees or something. I go over there and it helped in the process of dehydrating the onions. I don't know if it just basically preheated it, so they didn't have to use as much input in order to get it to a steam, or if it was high enough. I just know that it went over there, helped with the dehydration process at Cascade Specialties, and then it came back, and when it came back to the diesel, the cat engines, it was cooled down enough. So basically it acted as a giant radiator. And they generated up to 5 megawatts of electricity out there. Now, this year, I believe it was, I don't know if it was when SWAC did a tour out at the landfill, or when Eastern Oregon Women's Coalition had a stop out there. They're talking about going away from generating electricity and putting in some filtration systems and collect the methane off the landfill still, and then make renewable natural gas, because they'll put it into the pipeline. Obviously, they must feel that that's a better return on their investment than
Well, that
making
is-
electricity.
I used to know the guy that took care of those big, huge generators out there. That is so dirty. He says they have a unbelievable maintenance section where they tear them all down, and just literally scrape the, because the methane gas is just.
Yeah, it's dirty. That had, because there's one down in Coffin Butte landfill had this, and Umatilla Electric was part of that project, and they, siloxane, I believe is what it was, and basically it was taking the injectors and it puts this buildup on them, almost like a carbon deposit in a regular diesel engine, and it plugs up the injectors, and it's really hard on the engine cylinder walls, and it scores them, so they start burning oil and those types of things. But they were a high maintenance item, but.
Yeah. He says they move right along, they go real good, but they have to tear them down quite a few times. So, okay, any more reports anybody has? Okay. Next, we're going to go into executive session. Morrow County Board of Commissioners will now meet in executive session pursuant to ORS 192-6602D, which allows the commission to meet in executive session to conduct deliberations with persons designated by the governing body to carry on labor negotiations. Representatives of the news media and designated staff shall be allowed to attend the executive session. All other members of the audience are asked to leave the room. Representatives of the news media are specifically directed not to report on or otherwise disclose any of the deliberations or anything said about these subjects during the executive session, except to state the general subject of the session as previously announced. No decision may be made in executive session. At the end of the executive session, we will return to open session and welcome the audience back into the room. And when we return, there is no, we won't be making any decisions right now. I don't see that on here anyway.
Yeah, I took that off because I thought we weren't gonna have a decision.
No decision.
Yeah, no decision.
No decision.
Couldn't you say possibly? Or
Um,
just no?
generally, we would post possible action. We took it off. We probably should just keep it on there for future. This one this is providing an update on where we're at with some negotiations.
Okay, so there will not be any board action when we come into the open meeting, back into. Okay, with that, I'll
And I will
close
shoot a couple of these
open
people.
session and open the executive session.
People are jumping on. Cause then I'd have to open it back up afterwards. Which I guess it could.
He's having fun.
Okay, I'll call the regular meeting of Morrow County Commission to order. We're coming out of executive session. There will be no action taken. So unless there's any other business to come before the commission, we'll call it adjourned. Thanks, everyone.